progress that you expect toward the goals that you identified. So let's start at the beginning. This is a really good book if you ever run across it, Improving School Board Effectiveness. It really talks about how many studies indicate that evaluating the superintendent on student learning goals really relates to student improvement. It could be one of the most important things that you do. And so we're going to talk about how to do that effectively today. I love this quote by Teddy Roosevelt. The best leader is one who has the sense enough to pick good people to do what they want done, and the self-restraint from meddling with them while they do it. And so I think that's a great model for leadership, good leadership. It was also used by the owner of the Chicago Cubs a couple of years ago when they won the World Series. He said, yeah, to make sure that how is working. So we're going to think about that a lot today, the what and the how. Make sure that how is working. I love this quote too by Ken Robinson. The role of a creative leader is not to have all the ideas, it's to create a culture where everyone can have ideas and feel that they're valued. And I think you guys do that well sometimes, and you did a very good job of it when you put together sort of the progress for superintendent evaluation. We put together the methodology, talked through it, and decided on those metrics and how we were going to do this. And also when we came together in a goal session, goal think tank session, and actually came up with some very good, very valid, and very valuable goals for the district. Michael Pullen, if you've read any of his books, talks about the moral imperative that school boards have. And really, it is an imperative that we focus on raising the bar and closing the gaps in student learning achievement for all children, regardless of background. And even though you're elected by constituent area, when you sit at the dais, you really represent all the children of Clark County. What are you, the 5th largest district in the nation, I believe? And that's a lot of children. That's a lot of people who you can affect change for. And it really is our imperative to focus all of our energy on doing just that, raising the bar and closing the gaps. And I think your goals speak to that very well. Again, a little bit more from Michael Pullen, talking about what a moral imperative is. It's not giving inspirational speeches, it's fostering a purpose. And again, that's why we're focusing on goals today, focusing on the measurement toward those goals so that we can make sure that we fulfill that moral imperative to the children of Clark County. And today we're going to, the last thing he says, demonstrate respect for all, create conditions to connect others around the purpose, and examine the evidence of progress. And today is all about examining the evidence of progress. Again, we have to remember that the board decides what. They hire a superintendent, they put together their vision and their goals, they adopt policies, they approve a budget, they approve contractual agreements. But it's really, really important that you monitor progress, and that's what today is all about. And also that you be an advocate for the work that you're doing at your district. I always say, you know, if you can't be a cheerleader for your school district, who can? There's a lot of noise out there about what we're doing right and what we're doing wrong in public education, and really, it's your job to be advocates for the children of your district and public education in general. And so remember that the board decides what, and that's what you guys did in our goal setting session on February 2nd. You decided what was important to you. I don't know if you remember that I gave you all 2 stars, and we all expressed what were goals that were important to us, and everybody got to vote on which goals they felt were the most important. And then you gave those to your superintendent and said, okay, now we want you to put these things that are important to us into 3 tangible goals and show us how you're going to accomplish them and how we're going to measure whether we're making progress toward that accomplishment. And so I'm going to go back to that a little bit, and I want you to keep that in mind and keep that process in mind when you do go through the superintendent evaluation process. Remember, you decided what, then the staff came back to you with the how they're going to do it and how they're going to measure it. And that's exactly how it should be. So superintendent evaluation should be based on the performance goals and objectives that you identify, and based on the success indicators chosen to measure achievement. I applaud you all for really taking the time that you took, both with me and before me with other consultants, to develop a performance-based model for superintendent evaluation and performance-based metrics. That was a really great exercise, and we're just going to review it really quickly, some of the elements that I want you to focus on today when you go into this process. So you have to avoid evaluating the superintendent's personal skills and traits unless you agreed in advance and identified them as an area of improvement in his goals. So for instance, let's say you had identified that you wanted the superintendent to be more involved in the community or more involved in communicating to service clubs or to a certain population or a certain area. If you had identified that that was a personal skill that you wanted the superintendent to improve upon, it's fine to evaluate it. But if it wasn't identified, it's really not fair in an evaluation to bring up things that you're unhappy with at this point that he didn't have the opportunity to be aware of and to improve. And so after the superintendent evaluation is going to be the time where you guys can think about what other things you want the superintendent to focus on, whether they are the same goals, additions to your current goals, and if there are any personal skills or traits that you'd like them to improve upon. So after your evaluation, again, remember this is a circular sort of process where you evaluate the superintendent, then you decide on the goals for the following year, and then you can say you want him to improve, and then we continue to do that. We give him the opportunity to come back to you with how he's going to do those things, then we start the process all over again. So unless you've identified, as you did in the goal area, any personal skills or traits, it's not fair to evaluate them at this time. Again, performance deficiencies not previously identified. If you previously identified them and made them part of the goals, it's fine to evaluate them. If you did not, it's not. Really important to think about any rumors based on gossip, whether you just whether they're community members or staff members. It's really not fair to evaluate the superintendent on those things on hearsay. Again, unless you have some evidence for those things and unless you've identified them as areas for improvement prior to the evaluation in your last goal setting section. And then any topics that cannot be measured by some sort of objective standard. Believe it or not, I actually sat in on a superintendent evaluation where they told this particular superintendent that they didn't like the way she dressed. And that was part of her evaluation when that had never been identified before. And how do you identify a standard for how you want her to dress? They weren't specific. They just said something about the way you dress we don't like. and that was part of her evaluation. It wasn't officially, in the end, part of her evaluation because I counseled them that wasn't not an objective standard. If they said we want you to wear suits or we feel it's appropriate to wear a business suit at our business meetings or something more specific, that would have been different. But they just were very subjective and not objective about the way that they wanted to evaluate her. 2 primary content sources for the superintendent evaluation are progress on district goals. So again, the progress toward the 3 goals that you identified and that you approved. You identified on February 2nd and approved on February, I believe, was the 24th. And personal and professional qualities previously identified as areas for improvement, which you didn't identify any of those in our goal setting workshop. Remember that our goals were, we talked about SMART goals, and the goals that you set were very specific, definitely measurable. The superintendent and staff came back to you and said they felt that they were achievable and they were relevant to the work that they were doing, and then time-based. So understanding that it would be impossible for a superintendent or anyone for that matter to accomplish 100% of your goal in a short period of time between February and today. But we like to think about making progress in a timely manner and then set set a time, a realistic time frame when the goals can be accomplished. And so I applaud you for having specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and timely. This is going to be the hard part for you guys today. This is, and I've said this to you all before, it's fairly unusual for the entire superintendent evaluation to take place in open session. I know you all wanted to do that to be as transparent as possible, but normally boards talk about progress toward goals several times a year, not just one time a year, several times a year, and seek consensus on how they feel they're doing. And they ask the question of the superintendent, how are you doing towards your goals, and what do you need from us to do better? We haven't had the opportunity to do that. This is a pretty condensed time frame, but when you're talking, I'm hoping that your board president, when you're talking this evening and talking about the superintendent evaluation, I'm hoping that your board president will be able to distill down the conversations to find some consensus in the evaluation, the final evaluation that you develop for your superintendent. If you can't find consensus on each item, it's important to reach maximum agreement among board members by drawing on everyone's input, and you may have to do it by majority vote on each item. So I want you to think about that. The superintendent evaluation is not a place for individual opinions. That doesn't mean the superintendent doesn't want to hear your individual opinions. If you have them, or if you identify or don't agree with the majority of the other board members, I give the advice that the time to do that is on a one-on-one with an individual board member and a superintendent discussing that individual board member's concern. The place in the evaluation, it is a consensus document. It should be a consensus for a majority vote document that speaks for the feelings of the majority of the board. Any questions at this point?
Trustees, any questions? I do not see any questions at the moment.
No questions?
I think we can keep moving.
Okay, great. I'll move on. For more work on February 2nd, the process of evaluation, and I'll read this for you if you guys can't read it. This comes directly from the document that you adopted that says we agree that there's one evaluation of the superintendent, not 7. It's imperative that the board speak as one clear voice when evaluating the superintendent. Whenever possible, the board wants to work toward consensus on all matters pertaining to the evaluation, including the process, criteria, evidence, and final report. If consensus cannot be reached, the board needs to vote on items when necessary and reach the decision of the board. Minority or dissenting opinions need to be kept within a closed session, is what you adopted. Obviously, you're not having a closed session, so I would suggest that we amend that to say minority or dissenting opinions need to be kept to a one-on-one conversation with the superintendent or something to that effect, so that the board is giving clear review and direction to the superintendent as a whole in the district. Any questions about that statement? It's in the material that you adopted for superintendent evaluation on February 2nd. All good?
I see none.
Okay. Adopted goals. Minutes from February 24th stated that 3 goals and their measurement criteria were adopted via the following vote. And you could see the motion and the vote. It wasn't unanimous, but it did pass 5-1. In summary, February 2nd, the board adopted the process for superintendent's evaluation and agreed upon 3 primary goals. February 24th, the board approved the 3 primary goals and their methods for measuring progress. Today, based on what you previously adopted, a superintendent evaluation should be conducted in agreement upon a consensus model. And then your next step should be developing ongoing goals and measurement metrics by February 1st of 2023 for the February 23-24 evaluation. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is all I have for you.
Thank you so
Do you
much.
have any questions for me?
Thank you so much. Trustees, now is the time to ask Ms. Dudley any questions. See board.
Thank you so much. Just a quick kind of overarching question, if you don't mind. What exactly is the purpose of superintendent annual evaluation?
The purpose is to determine whether or not the superintendent and his staff are making progress toward the goals that you identified, and that you're either happy or unhappy with that progress, and also to ask the question, if they're not making progress toward those goals, what do you need from us in order to accomplish these goals? You need to have a discussion regarding what the obstacles are in their way toward achieving those goals, or what they can do, what you can do for the superintendent and his staff to help them accelerate progress toward those goals.
Thank you. I guess how much weight does the superintendent evaluation go into when considering future employment status?
It's very heavily weighted, very heavily weighted.
Would you say it's the only thing that we should consider, or is there anything else that we would take into account besides, a handful of metrics that we decided a year ago?
You know what, Danielle, it depends on what you identify. Again, I said, if there are other things that you want to identify that the superintendent or staff needs to improve, or superintendent needs to give staff direction to improve, that should be identified at the time of setting goals. So when we had that goal setting session, if there were any other items that you wanted to identify that the superintendent needed to improve, like communication or public perception, or anything in particular that you wanted him to improve, that should have been part of the goal metrics. It should have been identified as the goals something that you were going to evaluate down the line. And so very, very often, most superintendent evaluations are compiled of 2 or 3 or 4 goals, usually not more than that you want them to make progress on in the next 12 to 18 months, or long-term progress on, as well as things like we want more of an open door policy, or we want better communication, or we want you to develop a communication plan so that the community feels like we're more transparent, or but again, it's a goal that you identify ahead of time, that's included in the superintendent evaluation, and that becomes part of the overall evaluation, and certainly gives weight toward whether they continue with their contract or make changes.
I guess I understand that, and I really appreciated the work you did with us on February 2nd, and I like you as our trainer. I'm just trying to remember, I don't think that the board had an opportunity to submit our own suggestions. It was 6 items that the superintendent and with his staff brought to us as suggestions, and we were able to choose from those 6 only. So assuming if there was a problem with communication or the way he dresses or something, I don't believe we had an opportunity to submit those as individual trustees or a board.
In the
No,
training,
you did. If you recall, when I did that session with you all, I asked you to come prepared with the idea of, if you were looking back 2 years from now, what would you have liked to have accomplished, and what are the most important things for you as an individual board member to see accomplished in the district. Remember, I asked you to come prepared with that information, and we had all kinds of not only the superintendent and staff goals, but also all of your individual goals and things that you wanted to accomplish, and things that were important to you. And we put those all up on the board, and then I gave each of you 2 stars to be able to vote on the 2 most important things that you thought were the 2 most important. And these 3 goals came out of the 3 things that rose to the top that most of you voted on. So that was the process. And that was the time for you to put forward the things that were important to you as an individual board member.
Thank you. One more question right now, and I'll get back in the queue in a little bit. On February 2nd, we decided that we would measure, just like you said, we decided what we would measure, and then staff decided how they would do it and brought that back to us late February. I'm curious about if you personally were involved in that process between February 2nd and February 25th or so at all, or if it was just the staff that modified any of those goals that we approved in February 25th.
The staff did prepare those and modify them, but they made Deb and I aware of them.
Okay.
They seem to be in order.
So I guess my one question that I wanted to ask you, and it's the reason why I voted down these 3 goals, is when we saw one of them, February 2nd, this was the goal. It said, ensure that all students have access to highly effective teachers, administrators, and school staff. And then the goal said, conduct a broad information gathering campaign on the working conditions of district employees to include licensed employees, substitute teachers, and support professionals at schools and central office locations. Now, the goal that we saw a couple weeks later, it says, we'll hire 1,655 classroom teachers, representing a 25% increase from the most recent 3-year average before November 1st, 2022. So I felt like that changed a lot, and they told me at that point that it hadn't been confirmed with you and Deb that that was an acceptable SMART goal that we had been recently trained on, and that it was reflective of the original goal that we approved February 2nd.
So the way I saw it, Danielle, is that you guys decided the what you wanted to have happen, which is the first thing that you read. And then the superintendent and staff developed the how, which were those specifics about how many teachers they wanted to hire at what time frame. So that's how I interpreted it, that you guys developed the what you wanted to do, and the staff was coming back to tell you how they were going to do it.
The original goal, though, it says ensure all students have access to highly effective teachers, administrators, and school staff. It doesn't say access to new teachers. So in my opinion, this goal changed. I'll get back in the queue a little bit later, but I just have some concerns about the process altogether, because I was really excited about it when we worked with you February 2nd, and then I wasn't excited about it when I saw it again a few weeks later. So I'm good right now. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. And just a reminder, we did vote on those goals and it did pass. It was fun.
Thank you. Deb, I'm really grateful to see you again and have you answer questions that were going through my head, because I was confused about the closed session and even chastised about it a little bit. But when you say having a one-on-one conversation with the superintendent, which I have really great one-on-one conversations with our superintendent, I look forward to those. What would that look like when because there are some things that I would like to share with him as a concern, but I don't want it to look like I'm picking on him. I want it to look like I'm concerned about this. I'd like to see it look a certain way, but I don't want it to sound like, I know how that's going to look because I'm just here for oversight. Does that make sense? So what would that look like,
Well,
that one-on-one?
Yeah. And I think it's important to have those hard conversations sometimes. I mean, if I were superintendent and I had a board member concerned about something I was doing or something at the district, I would certainly want to know about it. Or if I was a board member and I was hearing about a little rumblings in the community about something going on at the district office, I would certainly be appreciative as a superintendent if a board member would tell me about that. And so I usually suggest that, and this happens quite often in superintendent evaluation, you have 1 or 2 board members who have identified things that they're not happy with in the superintendent evaluation, but the majority of the board doesn't agree. And so I always suggest that they make an appointment to sit down with the superintendent, remembering that as an individual board member, because of your bylaws, you don't have the power to direct. So as an individual board member, you can't go into the superintendent's office and say, I don't like how you're doing this, change it. Because the power to do that lies within the vote of the majority. But I think you can go in to the superintendent and have an open and honest conversation with him like you would with anyone about anything that you have a concern about, and allow them the opportunity to rebut or to explain why things are the way they are, and just have a simple conversation.
Okay, great. Thank you. Trustees, any other questions? Trustee Ford, do you want to put yourself back in the queue? Go ahead, Trustee Ford.
I guess I'm just trying to understand. I have observed other boards, and I have, I really think you know your stuff. In fact, when I met you, I went to all of your trainings at NASB, and then was super supportive of hiring you. So I'm not trying to argue with you. It's just I have, really been looking into how other boards do it, and I have seen that while the evaluation piece is important to make sure that a superintendent is able to track progress, measure goals, hit those goals, follow the strategic plan and whatnot. What about things that you couldn't predict a year ago? I mean, how do you say, I would like a superintendent that doesn't sue the board, without knowing that might happen? How do you say I'd like a superintendent that isn't going to have a 400% cabinet turnover rates before knowing that would happen. You know, so are there things that when considering future contract status, employment issues, that boards ever just decide, you know, this is maybe important enough to give as much weight as the evaluation is?
Well, Danielle, most boards determine any new things that have come up directly after. Remember, your superintendent is being evaluated on things that you identified in February. And so the fair way to do it is to evaluate them on the things that you identified in February that you told them were important to you and that were the hierarchy of what you wanted them to work on. If those items came up in February or were on top of mind for you in February, I think you should have brought them up with your fellow board members at that time to identify them and allow the superintendent the opportunity to improve on whatever behaviors you felt needed improvement. The time to do that would be now, after the superintendent evaluation, to determine if those belong with the other goals that you're going to put together for the superintendent. And perhaps the goals are completely different. Perhaps your goals will revolve around climate of your district. And you have to find out ways to measure whether it's a climate survey or employee survey, whether the climate's better. I don't know what that might look like, but that's a discussion you should be having. The part that I'm having trouble with, and if you talk to other board members, you know that usually this is a process that is not a one-day process. Usually the process towards superintendent evaluation is checking in regularly with the superintendent and the board on progress toward their goals, and the board being able to have some open conversations amongst themselves and the superintendent about how progress is going and coming to consensus. Because giving you all the opportunity to hear any of those individual voices that you have, and deciding whether that's allowable in deciding as a group if that's allowable to be in the superintendent's formal evaluation, or if the majority doesn't feel that way and it's just one voice. If it's just one voice, it's not ever included in the formal evaluation. The consensus document or the document that's voted on that goes actually into the superintendent's file as the formal evaluation has to be by majority vote of the board, and there is no place for minority opinions. And that's why I suggest the minority, if you have a minority opinion that the rest of the board doesn't agree with, that conversation take place between you and the superintendent, or maybe you, the board president, and the superintendent in the superintendent's office. Because in an open session like this, in a public meeting, your fellow board members can't unhear, and your superintendent can't unhear something you may say about them. And so it's probably not going to, if you're a minority voice or a minority vote, that opinion is probably not going to be part of the official superintendent evaluation document.
I understand, and I appreciate a thorough explanation. I hope that we can continue working with you in the future, because I really respect you and the way that you do things. Pretty much what I'm hearing is that at the end of the day, if there is a split board, that for side of the vote is going to be what we have to go with, and that's probably an argument to why local elections and school board elections really matter. So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Danielle.
Great, thank you. I think I also want to add kind of that check-in piece is also that formative report piece that we have, where we're consistently checking on our goals and where we are and monitoring if we're making progress or not. And those are the times where you can ask all of the how. With that, we have a couple other trustees in the queue. Trustee Brooks, go ahead. Go ahead, Trustee Brooks.
Thank you, President Sabeda. Do you think that there's anything unusual with the way that this school board functions or is supposed to function according to our bylaws or our policies? And do you think there's anything unusual about the way that this evaluation is supposed to transpire?
You know, every board is different. I can't make a determination what's right for you and what's wrong for you. I can just tell you that most, and I understand that you want us to do this in open session to be as transparent as possible. But honestly, I'm going to be honest with you. Most boards have a conversation about allow the superintendent to present his progress toward goals in a closed session situation. and then the superintendent leaves, and then the board discusses whether they feel that individually, whether they feel that that progress is something they're happy with or something they're not happy with. And they determine the score for each goal based on those conversations and based on either consensus or on majority vote. And then usually the board president or whoever they determine should do it will put together that final document. And then that document is presented to the superintendent in a public session. And the formal evaluation of the superintendent, once the board has spoken with one voice and come to consensus, happens in public session. So I have never, the hundreds of boards I've worked with, seen people have all those conversations in an open meeting.
Thank you for that. And then just one more question. Do you have any advice for when, because as you said, being on a board is very challenging, especially if you are in the minority vote. I understand that that's very frustrating. Do you have any advice for when the minority vote expresses their dissatisfaction in a very punitive manner towards their single staff member? And frequently it's because they aren't able to sway the rest of their board to their way of thinking. Is there some sort of advice that you would give to either the person on the minority vote or the rest of the board to make it feel more inclusive, to make that a more comfortable, to make that more comfortable and easier to explain what is happening?
I don't know that I have any advice about how to deal with it once it's happened, but I could tell you how to avoid it in future. Boards that do their best work are boards that all get on the same page very, very early. I'm really, really busy usually in December and January and February after elections because I'm doing a team building exercises with boards around the state and around the country. And they put the time and effort into creating a team and everyone understanding their roles. They develop things like protocols for how you do things, how do you get things on the agenda, what do you do if you disagree with the majority vote of the board? How do we agree that we're all going to behave when we don't agree with the way the vote goes? You make these agreements ahead of time. You put them on paper in the form of a governance handbook with protocols, with norms, with things like example of many norms are like we don't talk over one another. We never disparage the majority vote once the vote has been taken. You make agreements that are just your agreements that are, and they're different from board to board. Some boards I work with have 15 protocols, some have 3, some have 25 norms, some have 4. And you develop these ways of working together very early so that everyone's on the same page and everybody agrees how they're going to work together and what they're going to do. You develop protocols like the use of social media. What do we post on our personal social media? Let's all agree what we post and what we don't post. And you come together as a group and agree on the rules of behavior and the rules of how we want to be seen by our public. You agree on what you want the complexion of the board to look like. You agree on what you want it to feel like in the district, how you want the employees of the district to feel about the board. You come to consensus on those things. And I don't know what kind of work you did because I kind of got involved after things had gone a little sideways, but I don't know what kind of work you did at the beginning, but I can tell you, you have an election coming up. The most important thing you can do once that election is done and you have seated board members, or even before they're even sworn in, is to have some conversations like that so that you all are working from the same rule book. You know, you're all working from the same consensus document and decide what you want. So having that future vision and having those things in place will help a great deal.
Thank you. Right. With that, Trustee Garcia Morales. Go ahead, Trustee Garcia Morales.
Thank you, Madam President. I couldn't help but to just chime in and mention, hi, Deb, very nice to see you again. I couldn't help but to mention that we, a couple of meetings ago, chose to, this board agreed to move forward the culture and climate assessment of the organization at large. And that is work that is going to be taking place in the near future. And my question more specifically, Deb, is with respect to board evaluation. What function does the board evaluation play when it comes to the superintendent evaluation? Should those be done at the same time, in concerts, separate? What insight do you have for us?
You mean a board self-evaluation?
Yes.
A board self-evaluation is traditionally usually done once the seated board is in place for 6 to 8 months. Then you usually do sort of that, I've got to talk to you about that pre-meeting, that once the board is seated and everyone's in place, having those sort of rules and discussions about protocols and norms and a governance handbook. And then the board self-evaluation is usually based on your experience 6 or 8 months into working together as a group, whether or not you're adhering to those things that you agreed to in the first place. And the way I do board self-evaluation is really just have a conversation with all of you and have you fill out a little form that says, are we doing what we said we wanted to do? Are we accomplishing what we said we wanted to accomplish? Are we perceived the way that we hoped to be perceived by our public? Are our behaviors helping that or hurting that, or what could we change? So it's sort of a check-in time. And again, it's usually 6 to 8 months after you've had that first initial good beginnings workshop is what I call it, when you start with a new board or even one new board member, have those conversations, and then 6 to 8 months down the road, evaluate whether or not you're adhering to the things that you agreed to do.
Thank you. Trustee Cavazos?
Thank you, Madam President. Mine is not more, first of all, nice to see you, Deb. Thank you for being here, especially when you said, I know you're not feeling well. I just want to kind of piggyback on what Trustee Brooks had asked, and it's very interesting to find out, about your vast experience, how other boards handle it. And I think it would be fair to say that if everybody followed the same way we were doing it, that'd be kind of unusual, because most of the boards that I've talked to do the process the way that you talked about. So I just appreciate that general statement, and basically just kind of moving toward consensus so we can kind of get going on this. I also appreciate your comments about, when the boards are in place after elections are held, and I assume that that kind of means toward like team building and setting goals, if I'm not mistaken. So I just want to thank you for that, and for the general kind of run through on this, and your willingness to go into a little bit more detailed explanation. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Linda.
And I think the only thing I'd like to add is specific to the closed set doing a portion in closed session. Our lawyer had, our counsel had some concerns specific to some board members potentially doing an OML violation, because it's pretty, there's a, and counsel, I'm looking to you kind of what NRS we're using to make sure this this evaluation happens in the open session.
Thank you, President. That would be NRS 41.00, requires this all. I
So
confirm that, but well, can't speak as to what other boards are doing it, whether or not they're correctly, but sure you guys are doing it correctly.
and I potentially maybe one day we could get a written opinion. Writing. What do you think? I will also like to do the evaluation as Deb shared. Again, but we're following our legal counsel. So thank you. Just want to make sure everyone knew of that. Trustees, any other questions before I, if not, I'll go to public comment. Right. So first for public comment, we have Anna Binder.
Good evening, Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Jara. So, like really everything that I just heard is just kind of really silly, because on Tuesday we got like a really great presentation about open meeting law at our meeting. And so what we all just listened to, there's two really big highlights in this. And sometimes I just don't even know if we're doing it, because there's so much that goes on and happens that it really does lead the public to believe that people are taking sides, people are leaning, people don't care. I mean, we get board members who roll their eyes at each other and stare at the ceiling while the other one is speaking. You know, like it's just terrible. But the line that I love best in this, it says, all public bodies exist to aid in the conduct of the people's business. This is taxpayer money. These are
Damn
our
right.
children.
Damn right.
This is our community.
Thank you. James Bayless.
How you doing, ladies and gentlemen? So I guess I just wanted to kind of just address, so I understand what you guys are doing with this, whole evaluation for this gentleman. I think we should kind of maybe address that back in October though. But the situation is, what do you do when you've been coming to a board talking about the superintendent and the situations you have with him, but you get no addressment from the board and you get no addressment from the superintendent? What do you do then when you are basically being ignored? But you know, the evaluations sound great, but the real show is when a certain person is on camera, he sounds great, he looks great, but low key he ignores everything they have said. So what do you do with that when you have a superintendent that blows smoke and mirrors everywhere? How do you really get any type of justice? You know, I need deep pockets like that, gentleman. I need to help, maybe pay somebody to help my son, because he's got Danny Bahara blocking us everywhere which way I go. He's the AG. So what do you do? And you got the AG in your pocket. What do you do? Have a good day.
Thank you. That's all I have for 2.11.
Yeah, you're gonna hurt yourself.
All right, I think that's all we have. Trustees, any other final comments before we move on to agenda item 2.02? Deb, are you still there?
I am here. I'm just, I will just be observing from here on out.
Okay.
Unless you have other questions.
I don't see any more questions, and being spoke too soon. Trustee Galazos.
Just very briefly, I just wanted to confirm, Miss Dudley is just going to be observing, but she's not going to be facilitating the evaluation as it's submitted. Is that correct?
Correct.
But she's going to stay on with us on the meeting?
Correct.
Thank you.
Trustee Williams.
Thank you. I was gonna make a motion to accept this information. Move on.
I know this says for possible action. I don't believe we need to make an action. I'm looking to council.
It says that. Yeah, possible action, but we don't need to take action. Move forward. Move forward.
I think we okay. Thank you, council. Thank you, Trustee Williams. We're now moving on to, well, before I fully open 2.02, now is the time. If you would like to have any public comment on 2.02, please make sure you see, if you could provide our staff with a yellow card. Now is the time to do that. Once we open the item, we will not be taking any more yellow cards. Okay. Seeing none, we're going to go ahead and open this item. This is item 2.02. Evaluation of the superintendent of schools. Discussion of possible action regarding the 2022 evaluation of the Clark County School District Superintendent of Schools. I know we have a presentation. So superintendent, yes, it is. I will pass this to you so you can share your findings here. But superintendent.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. I just wanted to orient everybody to what's on the public. I do have an overall, I would say, narrative that just encapsulates the entire Focus 2024 year to date and the work that of the entire unit, all the units from business, operations, finance, chief of staff's office, the entire organization. But it really covers the entire strategic plan. But as I'll go over the goals, and thanks Deb for covering, Studley for covering the process. Before I get started, and I'll just be brief, before I get started, I couldn't be more proud of the work of our entire 40,000 employees. The support staff, our educators in our classrooms, and our building principals that have done an amazing job, and which is reflected here on the goals. So I wanted to make sure that the entire public and everybody's aware that this has been a collective effort. And I'll just go over the brief goals and where we landed now that we have our data. So the goal number one was to increase proficiency of students in all racial ethnic student group by 7 percentage points in reading by grade 3. After an analysis and review and final outcomes that were released by the NDEs in September 15th, we said by 7 percentage points, and we increased district-wide by 7.4. Native American students, it's a 4.1. There was growth, but didn't meet the target of 7 percentage points. Look at our Asian, our Hispanic, Latino students, where you see the dark green. That means that we met the goal as a district. Our Black African American students, we made a 2.9 increase. We did increase, but not to the 7 percentage points. And you look at multiracial Pacific Islanders or our white students. Before I get into our math outcomes, I just want to kind of give you a little bit of as to the how. And I would tell you, the big piece is just getting our children back in school in front of our hardworking educators, our face-to-face instruction, our building leaders working on really looking at standards-based tier 1 instruction, progress monitoring. We have made some moves around our math growth assessment and working around DLC and working with our teachers to really support our educators, to really look at where we need to be. If you recall, when we started setting these goals, I believe we had a drop of about 15 points, 15 percentage points, so we are halfway. That's why we're calling it a rebound. We're rebounding. Obviously, COVID had a significant impact, but having our children in front of our educators has been one of the things that we are really extremely proud of the work in our schools. When you look at our math, we missed the mark, I would say, around mathematics. We did make growth, except in 2 categories where we went down, and looking at where we've been. One of the things that is concerning for us in math in middle school, obviously the implementation, if you recall, we are implementing our math curriculum for the first time as a district. So we're looking at obviously the impact that's had in our educators, right, in the professional learning and really providing that support. So something that we want to continue. One of the things that as a board you heard from our team, and really one of the things that I'd like to not include it here, but I think it's important to note. If you recall, we had 60 schools in our differentiated school support program, where we identified targeted support, where we tiered our schools. We saw the 60 schools, we saw 50% of those schools made significant gains. So there is upward, I would say, and onward in really helping our educators. One of the things that gets into towards the tail end, obviously our teacher shortage has an impact, which is something that we certainly need to continue to address, not only locally, but as a state as well. If we can go to goal number 2, the second goal was the decrease over the overrepresentation of Black African American student group and suspensions by 5 percentage points. We did meet that goal, and also the discretionary expulsion. But I can tell you, the professional learning and the work, and we have one of the things that, as Ms. Dudley was talking about, the progress monitoring, and we've had plenty of presentations to this board on our work, Dr. Barton and the team. But I can tell you, we really do have strong, multi-leadership teams in our schools. And that, where they look at data, not only our achievement data, they look at panorama, they look at behavioral, they look at attendance, and at the school level, they're doing a great job and really trying to identify and provide the specific interventions for the schools. And the piece that I would tell you, the Care Solace and some of the other support systems for our schools, I think that has been, I would tell you, something that we are, and you as a board should be very proud, because it actually, it's something that we should be very proud, because it's been recognized nationally, in really providing some of the work that our schools are doing around social, emotional, and providing the interventions. One of the things that, when you look at the last goal, is the hiring of the 1,655, and that number was set to represent a 25% increase from the most recent 3-year average before November 1st. I'm going to tell you that I'm proud of the work that our HR team has done under the leadership of 2 chiefs. Because this was Ms. Jones set the goal with her team, and then with Dr. Folks' team. But it also has been this board in voting on the salary increases for the recruitment, also the relocation. We've had to date over 500 educators that have taken advantage, basically, that we've brought in using the $4,000 relocation bonus. And obviously this board in the recruitment, and also that was paid actually this past paycheck, the $2,500. So really appreciate the board's leadership there. One of the things that our HR team, our recruitment team continues to do, and some of the strategies, obviously, that we're, going on to all our forums and mediums online, right? Obviously, and I've learned a little bit more around the work and how we continue to the outreach, not only Indeed and LinkedIn, and paying for some of those services. And one of the things that I was talking to Dr. Stoltz is that you have to continue to refresh, so you stay at the top of the list of when folks are, and when applicants are looking for. So some of these strategies that our recruiting team, one of the things that as we were opening schools, the HR team working very closely with our regional superintendents and the school associates in schools where there was high vacancy, and how do we then provide the immediate support, because that's what we have our greatest need for our children. So a lot of collaboration, a lot of work there. The challenge that we have, I know that we're out of the 30%, we still have a vacancy rate, so obviously as we look to think about the future, I think one of the things that our HR team continues to do and analyze is the retention. How do we keep our veterans in our kids for next year? Both, if I may, it's not only recruitment, but also retention. How are we retaining our educators that are in our schools? So something that we certainly looking forward to address for the next year. What I can tell you, another challenge, and I've had this conversation, I had a conversation multiple times with our state superintendent, spoke to her again today. There is a backlog, because, our current number, if you will, we have 134 educators that we have approved that are ready to go, but there is a backlog at the state. And it's not just NDE, it's also the Department of Public Service, right? It's how do we get them? And we have seen, and our principals continue to share that, we lose candidates to other states. And I think our relationship and our collaboration with the state is that they need some more support there, because they continue to pay overtime, they continue to provide that effort to help. But there's so many hours in the day with limited staff. So I think that is a state conversation that we need to continue, because it's not just the Clark County School District. We have other school systems, and also, when you look at public service and I would say the fingerprinting process, there is a delay in getting folks here. So, and licensure. So, I like to close. This is our 40,000 employees. I just get to sit here and share the data with you. The incredible support staff, our teachers, our administrators, that have been day in and day out on behalf of our children, and had a great opening. And I couldn't thank them enough for the results that we have. We're not where we need to be, but I would tell you that we're on the way. So thank you.
Thank you, Superintendent. All right, trustees. So in February, we aligned these goals to the superintendent's evaluation, in keeping with SMART goals, having measurable goals with objective outcomes was really important. I think at this point, are there any questions from the trustees about this report? Yes, question? Trustee Ford?
I don't have questions. I just feel like these numbers might not be super accurate. They don't take into account that the grading policies changed recently to no longer account for attendance or behavior, and to allow students to choose not to do assignments, and be able to retake tests and until they receive a passing grade. The suspensions went down. It's good, but from what more recent data that's come out, it seems that in-house suspension, aka our SAR-on programs, and RPCs went up. It's my understanding that principals were told to find alternate means of discipline to hit the metrics we were going for. We hired a lot of new teachers, really impressive actually, but we lost a lot of experienced teachers because they weren't happy with the new grading policy or the discipline practices. We've even had teachers recruited this year turn around and leave. And those numbers I do not believe are reflected in this document. And none of these numbers reflect the intent of the goals that were presented to us on February 2nd. So to me, this is an incorrect, and it is, I don't know the word, but it has been made to look better than the actual results of the district have been. So I don't support this as a final evaluation result.
Thank you, Trustee Ford. Do you have any other comments?
I don't. I hope everyone else keeps their comments to their opinions and not criticizing my things in advance.
Thank you, Trustee Ford. Trustee Garcia Morales.
Personal opinion is that we then wonder why we have shirt issues in our school district, because you have elected officials who are expected to do their job, don't forget that they will have harder conversations and receive training. So it makes it difficult to, be successful as a unit. My intention and focus is to thank the superintendent and his team on the success of this work. I really appreciate acknowledging that gains have been made, however, they're not enough. And I'm especially interested in hearing, and it sounds like there's been a lot of learning that has taken place as a result of these goals. I also want to remind my colleagues, or it's just a reminder for myself really, that we didn't have goals last year, and so this is the first time that we're coming together to be organized enough to have them, and that's really important for us as an organization. I want to learn a little bit more about what we learned and how this from the results of these goals, and how these the learning will be applied. Sounds like some of it already has, but how will it be applied in the coming year?
Superintendent?
Yes, Madam President, members of the board, when you go back to, if I start from the end on the teachers, we've hired a lot. Obviously there's an increase, but it's the retention. And that's part of what the work that our HR staff is doing is at one point where we see teachers leave, and instead of salary, and let's kind of get to the why. And I know that Dr. Toltz has shared with this board publicly, some of the exit strategies and I would say service that you're going to be embarking on to get to the why for folks, because you hear X, Y, and Z, but we don't know the reality as to the specifics. So those are some of the things. So I think that's where I would say for this board and for us is the retention is going to be critical moving forward. When you look at the achievement math, is concerning for all of us. I think as we see moving forward, our teachers need time to plan, need time to work together. And that's something that we are looking to see how we provide that time moving forward, to build up their collaboration in their school, you know, and one of the things that we know, that we continue to see is, when teachers are selling their preps, they're losing their time for prep. So how do we provide that space? And I think that's where it all goes together. So continue to stay focused with Envision, which is the math curriculum. And hopefully, you know, that's one of the things that we will see gains. The monitoring, I would tell you, when we are looking at as a whole, what we have seen the gains is how do we then continue to support our building leaders to monitor tier 1 instruction in all contexts, to be able to address. And that's one of the things that we are putting in the work that our deputy, a very capable deputy superintendent with her team, is how do we provide the support at the school level in monitoring instruction to support teachers to be able to do that. And I think that goes hand in hand with the TLC, with the PLC, I'm sorry. So, and the discipline, and I would tell you, as a matter of fact, I had a conversation with the building principal yesterday, as he is saying to me, you know, we are looking at how do we keep our kids engaged in our school. Sending them home is not the answer. So when we're putting them in an OnStar program, where we're putting them in our schools, in our classrooms, is to continue to provide instruction, but then maybe separate them from the incident for a couple of days and then bring them back and re-engage them. So our principals are being very proactive when they're looking at that data. So that's one of the things that we have. And what we do have, if I may, these numbers are from Smarter Balance Assessment. This has nothing to do with final exams. This has nothing to do with, this is how our kids perform on the state mandated assessment. It has nothing to do with grading. It has to do what our kids were able to demonstrate at the end of the year.
Thank you. Just a continued gratitude. There is a lot of challenges that the district has faced, and you know, this is a beautiful example of what can be done if we stay focused and continue to monitor progress. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Garcia Morales. Trustee Cavazos.
Thank you, Madam President. I do agree with Trustee Ford about, you know, the goal 3 as far as the teachers, but I also appreciate the staff and Superintendent Jarrell saying that we're not where we need to be at, and that our human resources are working on retention and trying to see a little bit better, more specific exit strategies, because I believe that our teachers have been telling us for some time that they're going to leave and why they're leaving. But I do appreciate the honesty and the acknowledgement of that. I do have a couple of questions on, I know that as far as we didn't reach it on the 7 percentage points, but I'm thinking that looking at, if my math is correct here, it's about a 1.8 increase. We didn't reach the 5 percentage points, since I appreciate that acknowledgement also, and that we need to move forward on that. Where I have a question is on the over-representation on goal number 2 of the Black African American student group and discretionary expulsions. When I was preparing for this and going over all this material, I noticed on some of the material that's released to us in public record that we had 655 Black students that were still expelled last year in 2021, 374 in 2019-20, and 2021 is kind of like non-comparable because we weren't really in school. So I think that we need to kind of take an overarching view at this, that we are making some progress, but that we need to continue working in a forward direction to reduce those numbers. So that's all that I have right now. I may put myself back in the queue, and I thank you for the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Cavazos. Trustee Brooks.
Thank you, President Zepeda. Thank you for the presentation. I appreciate it. And as multiple people have pointed out, we do have been actually monitoring student outcomes, and they have come before the board. So this isn't new information other than obviously SBAT, which is a one-time end of the year. So I appreciate you recognizing that just recruiting is not going to get us there, that we do have to work on retention. And it does sound like that is an area of focus that that you will be recommending at least. I appreciate that it has been a very rough couple of years for the board, for the community, for the nation. And I appreciate the fact that we were able to make gains and we are starting to rebound. So kudos to you and your staff. My only question is, and I know you don't hear this enough, but what are the key issues that you think the board can help you focus on? And how can we better serve you and better serve our community? What kind of support do you need to make your success even greater?
Superintendent?
Madam President, members of the board, great question. And if I may, I think goes back to what Ms. Dudley mentioned. I think setting the goals allowed us to be able to set and continue the focus, continue the support that has been provided. And I say this to the public. Things that come before you, I just want to go on the record and say things that come before you is to improve the outcomes of our children. There's no personal agenda. I want to make sure that we're very clear. Things that come before you are things that this team, staff, recommend to produce positive results for our children. So continue to ask questions to the why, but support the things that come before you as a board, because it'll be it'll be something that will impact our children positively. And that's ask the tough questions of me in a respectful way, and we can then move forward as a unit to support the outcomes of our kids and our 40,000 employees.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you, Superintendent. Thank you, Trustee Brooks, Trustee Guzman.
Thank you. And thank you for this presentation, Dr. Jar. I really do appreciate it. I really do. And I do know that we did bring up retention, and I know that you have to recruit in order to figure out where the retention is. And so I appreciate that. I do think that time and retention is probably the one thing that is holding our kids back. The time that we put on teacher and support professional plates. I ask it a lot, as you know, and I even ask you on our one-on-ones, and you tell me to bring it to the board meeting, and I appreciate that too. Because I really feel like that has been brought to us. I'll be on the board almost 2 years now, and I think I've heard it at every single board meeting. And I think that really should be our focus, because our kids need those adults. And I think all of these goals that we gave you, had we had a licensed professional in front of our kids, probably would have been even better, because we have great educators in this district. We really do. So I agree with that. And I want to support you in getting that done. And then also, I think we need to talk to our principals about what they're doing, because like I have told you, I went out to Boulder City, and the principal at Merritt is doing some fantastic stuff around that. Just amazing. And he is using his carry forward in order to help his students so that they will feel more accomplished when going forward. So I feel like if we ask the people who are actually doing the work what they think would be great for their kids, I really feel moving forward, they will do. They will. So I do appreciate this. And I appreciate it as a stepping stone that we will move further down the line. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Trustee Guzman. Trustee Williams?
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Gar, and your staff for putting together this presentation. I think it's also important to note, and most people don't know this, but we've had 3 chief of HRs since I've been here, right? Because one left, I say October of last year, then we had an interim, and we have a brand new one. And the things that they're doing and revamping consistently is helping close that potential gap. I know these numbers look really scary when it comes to teacher shortages, but our district isn't unique. Every district in the nation is dealing with this. I assume that you guys track those numbers as well, so you can have healthy comparisons as to where you guys fall in comparison to, I would say, Dallas, Chicago, or anything like that. So there's a lot of good work going on, and I just wanted to say thank you for this and put that out to the public so that they understand that it's not necessarily anything that the district is doing one way or another. Sometimes people just leave, they leave work and they don't come back, or the nation is faced with COVID for 2 years, and then hiring shortages and job losses and things like that, and now inflation and moving and everything else. So I think given the circumstances, this is a pretty good report. I hope to see these other numbers go up in the next coming years. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Williams. All right, trustees, any other comments before we move on to public comment? Anything just as additional context to Ms. Dudley's point about kind of next steps. That's where we talk about goals, and I think my ask from our board is to continue to have that in the back of their mind, so that we're thinking about, you know, what's our next step here. With that, we're going to go ahead and go to our first public commenter on 2.02, and that's Ms. Vicki Kreidel.
Good evening. Vicki Cardell for the record. I'm a reading teacher for grades 1 to 5 in CCSD and president of NEA Southern Nevada. First of all, I wrote this before the meeting tonight, so I'm going to try to revise this as I read it a little bit. I firmly believe that every employee in CCSD should get a fair evaluation process. I'm a little confused about this process. The presentation helped clear up some of the questions that I had. But I think it's vitally important that you can't look at retention apart from recruitment. They really go hand in hand. I'm going to tell you the honest truth. The model we're using with educators in CCSD today, this year, is not sustainable. We will not retain teachers with this model. It's too much. Teachers are evaluated on a multiple measure tool called the NEPF. Very detailed, and it's very rigorous. And if you're going to expect us to all do our best, some things have to get taken off our plate. And we do need more time, 100%. But I can tell you that their teachers are working so hard. And there's a lot of successes in every building. I'm thrilled to be teaching just reading. And it's amazing. And having just a little bit taken off my plate mentally makes such a huge difference to the amount of stress and anxiety that it is. So, and asking you really to look at what's on teachers' plate and try to give us more time. We should be talking about how many educators left before they hit 30 years, how many were hired, how many remain after resignations and retirements, and how many do we still need for this year? How many students in CCSD are without a licensed educator right now? Those are all important things. We owe the children in CCSD, the families in the community, to do our best with this process. We count on you all to do right by CCSD and by these kids. These families trust you to do what's right for their children. So I'm asking you to please make sure that we do a thorough process. We all have to go through it. Every single administrator, every teacher, every employee. So I'm just asking that we do the same for the superintendent. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Camila Bywater.
Good Camila Bywaters, president of the Las Vegas Alliance of Black School Educators, co-chair for education for the National Action Network, Vice President Tracy Lewis, and also Tracy is the president of Wake Up. A beautiful example of an evaluation process cannot be 3 pages. That was by far one of the worst presentations I have seen in my life in regards to showing the public how we have made gains in this district. And with the level of increased pay that the cabinet members have received, that is the presentation. There was no showing of how did we get to the results. You can tell us anything and we're supposed to believe it, but what was the process to getting to these results? If we increase expulsions, what steps we're taking to get there?
Yep.
And in regards to proficiency, when I looked at the Nevada Accountability Portal with some of my advisors, we noticed that there was a large group of students who didn't even test. So was that taken into accountability when we were determining the final results? Absolutely unacceptable that this district has gotten millions of dollars and we get 3 pages of how we have improved in this district. That is absolutely unacceptable.
Damn right.
And if you think that is beautiful, let's try again. Unacceptable to do a special meeting, have people come out here at 5 p.m. or whatever time the meeting started and sit here and tell us that's a beautiful job. When I was a teacher, I had to bring more to the table than that. If I wanted to get a good evaluation as a teacher in the Clark County School District, I had to show how did I engage with parents, not show that I engaged with 100, but what did I do to engage with them? I had to actually show how I increased proficiency. So if we're asking teachers to do that, to get a 4 on their evaluation, we have to do a much better job here with the superintendent.
Yep.
Unacceptable. We have way too much money. The cabinet then got way too much of an increase to present that to the public. To be ashamed of yourself. There's no way that we can improve this district with that type of allowable presentation. No way. I am highly upset. That's all I gotta say. Unacceptable, and the community should not accept that. You should not. Teachers have to come to their meeting with more information and more evidence than that. And this is a beautiful job. Congratulations, because I'm hot today. There's no way. 3 pages.
Well said.
That is all I have for public comment. We also have a narrative. That's all I have.
Narrative.
All right, Tracy. Now you wrote down 2.0 and 3.0. But you could,
All 3.
you also wrote in 3.0, 4.0, and 3.01, 4.01, 2.1. And 2.01, 3.01, 4.01.
I thought I could go 1 and 2.
Ms. Finer, go ahead and I will just update your form here. Come on up.
Anna Binder for the record again, Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Jarrett. What Camilla was just referencing is apparently the database says that only 54% of students took that test. So if we're, I'm not really great at math, but if barely half of our kids took that test, how did we have any growth? So anyways, also, I'm sure you'll all be elated to know that Data Insight Partners put out like over a 20-thread tweet with all of the very accurate data that was not given to the community today. And I know people like to call them names in the community, but that is data. And when you bring forth the correct data, you can't manipulate it. I know you guys are going to get into the narrative, and I just really wanted to point out, because piggybacking off Camilla again, all of the success in this is done by staff. It says region, it says unit, it says like all of the credit is being given back to our really great employees. So I like that it wasn't like written selfishly, right? Because we are using employees. But there's just really something going on that I've been biting my tongue about. And I don't think I can bite my tongue about it anymore because it really, really irritated me in the previous presentation about rumors from the community. So I'm gonna share a rumor with you right now, and then you can call me later to verify it if you like. In the last 30 days, 2 of our special education children have been sexually exploited on campus. 2, videotaped, put to Instagram, circulated among students.
Wow.
One of these students is intellectually disabled. Do you think those kids have been suspended?
Nope.
Do you?
Nope, I haven't.
District's calling them bystanders.
Madam
Thank
Cepeda,
you.
if you would like to look at my photo, since I knew you were gonna do this, I have 2.2 on there.
No, you have 3.01, 4.01.
You wanna try
And
photo for,
2.01.
photo for paper? Photo for paper?
Well, Mr. Bayless, if you would like, I could modify this here.
I
for you.
appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you.
Mr. Bayless.
So since we're talking about superintendent school, I guess everybody else, but I guess just what I know. Basic high school, my son's school. Since he's been there since last year, he got jumped. Mr. Jar knew about it and didn't do nothing about it. He actually told law enforcement to stand down and don't do nothing about it. I was told by one of my buddies. So if you have a superintendent and the director of compliance pretty much allowing kids to be hurt in school, why are they here? We could go without them and have the same outcome. The situation is when in October, my very son was up here addressing this gentleman and the fact that he should not be here. I still have the video of the sexual assault that happened when he first got here that no one even addressed, even to this day. January 10th was never addressed to this day. And I can address to you why maybe teachers are leaving. Basic high school. How about the Sped program? Right now the classes are doubled up because Bustamante cleared out half of the class because of what happened to my kid. Half of the school got cleared out because anybody that knew Ian vanished. How about the fact that Danny Bahara okayed the fact that the Sped students are now doubled up? Ralph, Ian's English teacher, he vanished. They haven't even filled that place. They have no qualified Sped students or Sped teachers pretty much on that campus, except for Mr. Braceras, which is in English. He's the only one with credentials in masters. The IEP, the principal, which was the self-contained. He has no credentials, schooling, or education to be dealing with special needs children. His last job prior to here was working for the government for the power company. I believe that's part of that economic alliance, isn't it? So the factor is when you have teachers that aren't qualified to be handling special needs children, we should be maybe looking for that. When our teachers are crying out for help and you guys kind of pass money amongst each other, that's kind of maybe why your teachers are leaving. When a kid at McDonald's that just got out of high school is making more than your teachers, that could be a good reason why they're leaving.
Yep.
When a brand new teacher gets as much as somebody that's been here for 20 years, that could be a good reason why they're leaving. Factor is you guys don't appreciate the people that are here to keep you in your jobs. Without these kids, without those teachers, you have nowhere to go. Then what do? Those are your constituents. Those are your people you are supposed to look out for you. You're supposed to look out for them.
Supposed to represent them.
You guys have a good day.
Thank you, Mr. Bayless. All right, trustees, that's all I have
Well
for
said. Well
this
said.
item. Are there any, trustee Cavazos?
Thank you, Madam President. I just want to say, I want to ask a question. I think I know the answer to it already, but I want to ask it anyway. And I don't know if we need to, like, when I asked before, I think Deb is just observing now. Is that correct? I'll just go ahead and ask you. Is there any way, or can we separate parts of this out, or does it have to be taken as a whole? Because I feel that in actuality and totality, this has been so rushed. And I just feel that it's been rushed for no good reason. And, the whole process has been rushed. It's been very unwieldy. And the meetings, that have been set and then changed and set and then changed. Is there any way that any of this can be separated out on the different parts?
Can you explain? Do you mean,
Like on
like we
goals?
provide a number on a goal? Is that what you mean? Provide a score on a goal? Like for instance, in goal 1, we have reading and mathematics. So we provide a score for, again, because we need to collectively come to a score for this evaluation. So we could score 1 point A, 1 point B. The rubric we've used is 1, 2, 3, 4. Is that what you mean?
Actually, I hadn't thought of that, but that's a good idea. I was actually talking more like kind of like a broader perspective as far as separating out the 3 large goals, like 1, 2, and 3, or do we have to take them all 3 as one?
I'd be supportive if we do, we take goal 1, which realistically, I think since there's 2 pieces to goal 1, we could do goal 1, part A, part B. And then I think also with goal number 2, we had 2 pieces. We had a suspension piece and a discretionary piece. So we could do kind of chunk it out that way. Would you be supportive of that?
Yes, possibly. I'd like to hear from my colleagues, though, see how they feel, because again, it's not just me.
Thank you. All right, is that all your questions, Trustee Ross? All right, Trustee Garcia Morales?
Thank you, Madam President. I'm using the rating scale in policy, page BSE 1 on page 9. The overall rating scores and then the performance level associated with them. So at this time, is it okay for us to move forward with, based on Trustees Cavazos' recommendations, to kind of parse them out? Could we move forward with beginning of 1A? And if so, I'm happy to make them.
I am supportive of that too. It seems like there is some support here. Let me go to Trustee Guzman. Trustee Guzman?
I'm also on page 9 of 10 of the superintendent evaluation, looking at the evaluation template, and I was just wondering if we were going to utilize that. Because it really truly isn't a template, but it does give us a rating score and something that we could utilize.
I believe it's a 1 through 4, isn't it though? And then in terms of the formative piece, because of the policy we passed kind of in the middle of the year, we weren't able to vote on the formative items. We still received the formative presentations, which is how we know the what, how we know where we're going, how we are doing. So the formative piece, we weren't able to vote on.
Right.
So I think that would be my only concern, is specific to how that weighs in when we're able to vote on presentations, because we adopted that policy so late in the year.
So I'm looking at it, and it has overall rating scores and then performance level. Are we utilizing that piece? Because I just want to make sure that I'm on the same page as you. This is my first time. Understand that I don't want to make a mistake.
It is the 1 through 4, and then
That's the rounding ratings. Because the overall ratings have 0 through 1.4, 1.5 to 2.4, 2.5 to 3.4, 3.5 to 4.0.
Yes. that is the rating score.
Okay.
Okay. Trustee Brooks? Trustee Guzman. Trustee Brooks?
I wanted to get some clarification about the request to break these into separate components. It's my understanding we're supposed to be determining whether or not these goals are met, and I just want to know if that's what we're trying to inch towards, or if there's something else being proposed.
My understanding is whether we met the goal or not, providing the score. Trustee Cavazos? Okay. All right. So with that, we'll move on to 1.18, the SBAC reading proficiency scores goal. Trustee Brooks, you're still on here?
Yeah, could we do the categories real quick? So there's 1A, that is the reading.
Correct. 1A is reading, 1B is SBAC scores on mathematics proficiency.
Okay.
Then we have the disproportionality, the overrepresentation of Black and African American students, suspensions, that's one, and then discretionary expulsions. Again, very clearly outlining our Black and African American students. Again, we knew that was a big priority for us all. And then the last goal would be a singular item, just the 3.
So there would be 5 metrics.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
So again, that's like a 1A, a 1B, a 2A, a 2B, and then the last one is 1. Trustee Garcia Morales.
I'd like to try to make a motion. And so what I'm doing is moving to approve and assigning a score. Yes. I'd like to move to approve goal 1A, increase proficiency of students in all racial ethnic student groups by 7% from grading, by grade 3. And I'd like to assign a score of 4.
The score comes from the evaluation piece. Can you restate the policy? Okay, that's
I think an easy way to do it is maybe looking at the group metric, the overarching goal, whether or not it was met, determining yes or no, and then calculating the score. But I can try to. Okay. Great. So 1A would be the 7 percentage points increase in reading in grade 3. The district increased by 7.4. So that would be yay. Yes. Okay. The math, 5 percentage points in math would be a 1.3% increase, which would be a no. So yes, no. The decrease in the overrepresentation of Black African American student groups.
There they go, cutting mics again.
Take a 5-minute recess while we tell the sound. And then it's on the drum.
That was no technical difficulty. Okay.
We'll take a 5-minute recess. Time is 6:41. Return. It's a little bit more than 5 minutes.
Well, also cigarette. Hey, do me a favor. If I'm not back before the timer countdown, just switch it to scene 3, okay? When the countdown finishes. Okay? Because they're doing 5-minute right now. They're having issues. Like, apparently.
Right.
We don't know what
So
that's
we'll
all about.
give trustees a little bit of time.
Broke it. Phone comments coming.
Yeah, I
We'll
know,
come
right?
back,
So that was shit with the
in about 5-6 minutes.
Technically.
She was too obvious.
The lack of on the board. That's the
Oh, shit.
difficulty. That's already.
All right, trustees, start making your way back. If you are in this space, please start making your way back to the dais. Our mics are back on. For the folks online, we'll be starting back up in a minute here. And thank you, Mr. French, for your heaven sense. Thank you. That's from that. It's our 30-second countdown. Mr. French, do you have Ms. Dudley back? Is she listening to us? Right on. Thank you.
I'm here, just observing.
Thank you. All right, we're gonna go ahead and adjourn this meeting. Or that or adjourn, goodness. Reconvene, thank you. We'll go ahead and reconvene this meeting. Trustee Brooks, you were talking. Go ahead, Trustee Brooks.
All right, I'm gonna start from the top. Maybe gave you time to write something notes. All right, so based on Trustee Cavazos' suggestion that we break these into different categories, I have 5 categories. And I'm gonna go through them one by one, and I am gonna say whether or not they were met or not met. And then I'll tell you how the math would work if this is an acceptable way for this. Okay. So 1A is third grade math that is met. Or no, third grade math is, I know, reading is really put in the wrong order. All right. One is reading, which is met. And number 2 is math, which is not met. Or that's actually 1B, you're right. 1A is reading, 1B is math. 2A is over representation of suspensions, that is met. 2B is expulsions, discretionary expulsions, that's met. And number 3 is hiring, and that is met. So there are, this is the way I think the math would work. If you give a score of 4 for met, so it's like yes or no, and then a 0 for not met, then that means there would be 20 points. 16 of those points would be earned. So that would be 80% of the score of 4, which is a score of 3.2. Does everybody follow that math and logic? Yeah. Trustee Brooks, if you want to. Okay, oh, I see. I just said I can give it to you. We'll go.
It'll be personal, but you just do this one. Trustee, question for Brooks. Are you, so we're only assigning a 4 on a 0?
Yes. Either he met or did not meet the main goal.
Is there a reason why we're not, there are other numbers.
There are other numbers, yeah, that is true.
Numbers that exist in our policies. Can I learn a little bit more about your thinking process behind just the 0 and the 4?
There's not really a rubric, and there's not another way to do it that I thought was objective. There are, so for instance, it kind of balances out because if you look at the reading and there was an increase overall, but not all groups saw the increase. And then math, there was an increase, but it wasn't across the threshold. So I felt those two balanced each other out as far as like meeting or not meeting. I'm open to suggestions though.
Understood. Thank you. I'm gonna process that. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Garcia. One on this, Trustee Guzman.
Thank you. And I need understanding of the numbers too, because when I'm looking at the board policy, I'm looking as 1 as ineffective, 2 developing, 3 as effective, and 4 as highly effective. So if you do a 0 and 4, you're saying that either he was not even ineffective or he was highly effective. And so I don't think that's fair. I'm just putting that out there. I don't think it's fair. I think if we use the rubric the way that it is, if it's ineffective, great. If he's developing, like I think if we look at the math scores, I think they're developing. I don't think they're completely ineffective. If you look at the reading scores, he didn't meet all of them. I think it's effective. I don't think it's highly effective. You know, I mean, let's be fair.
I am open to suggestions, but
Yeah.
those scores that you're talking about are for the overall evaluation part. It's actually not each one of these metrics that you're supposed, that's like his final score. We've never in the past actually had a rubric where we went one by one and we determined, we just have never done it like that. I'm open to,
Okay, this is my first time. I'm just reading policy and trying to figure this out.
no,
So-
I'm absolutely open to suggestions, and if you want to do it another way, we can. It just,
I just want to be fair.
okay. So if you want to go one by one and do a score of 1 to 4, we can do that. In the past, when we've had a rubric, we actually just looked to see whether or not the goal was met or not. That's every rubric that we've ever had that's been goal-based has been yes or no. So it's historical practices that's.
Yeah, because it's easy to just say, yes, it was, and then just not show how you got there. You can racketeer that way.
I just need to process that. Thank you, trustee Guzman. Trustee Ford?
So in the past, like when we did the superintendent's 2019 evaluation, the 2020 mid-year evaluation, the 2020 end of the year evaluation, we always rated it on a scale of 1 to 4, and then came up with an average and came to a score. In fact, last December 14th, 15th, or of 2020, his rating ended up being 2.5, and it was based on the way the rubric that we did, the complete opposite of what you just explained, which I will actually just go ahead and put for the record. I think we need to add in somehow a mid-year evaluation like we used to have. This would probably save a lot of headache and hassle, but Trustee Brooks, you edited that out when you switched our policies before the new trustees were here to approve them. But I digress. That should be added back in. This with the community, I think would feel a lot better knowing that we evaluated in the middle of the year. And I don't know what's going on with this process, but I was under the impression, which is why I approved it during the work session, that Deb Darby would be facilitating the entire process. I did not know that we would be here during the meeting trying to figure out how to best come up with a way to measure these. I'm highly uncomfortable with this. I was only on board with Deb helping us. I understand she's sick. And she probably didn't prepare to do this, but this whole thing is absolutely not making any sense. Flawed, not gonna support it. Yeah. I think we should just end it here. Otherwise, this is gonna take another 2 hours and still not be efficient or effective. Thank you, Trustee Ford.
More explosion then would be great.
I guess, let me just ask the question, why have we decided that Lola gets to lead this and determine the way that we do the math and everything, and not our evaluator that we've paid money to and trusted?
Good question.
All right. So it was more because she offered to offer a solution. If you would like to offer a solution, Trustee Ford, you could be in. You want to add yourself back in the queue for a mathematical solution? There you go, Trustee Ford. With the context of each, we're rating 1 through 4. And again, these are pretty objective, whether the goal was met or not. While Trustee Ford does that, Trustee Garcia Morales, do you have any commentary?
I'm wondering if the board would have any appetite to, my colleagues would have an appetite going down the line and assigning, hearing the numbers that they would assign to the goal. And this would hear everyone's voice in terms of the score that they would assign to it, and then we do that.
Thank you, Trustee Garcia Morales. Let's see, Trustee Williams is now in the queue. Trustee Williams.
Thank you. Yeah, I would also support that. If there's 7 of us, we all have our own opinions on it, but at the end of the day, we go with the principle. In the sense of thinking, was the goal met? Was the goal not met? And then where do we look at from there so everyone gets their opinions out there? And then at the end of the day, we can also take that. So I would agree.
I think my only concern is some objectivity here.
Yeah,
Deb,
right.
You will have your hand raised.
That's fucking laughable.
I can't facilitate this, but I do want to encourage you to use the rating system that you adopted, the 1 to 4 scoring system that you adopted at a previous meeting.
Thank you, Deb. Trustee Brooks.
It doesn't sound like you want to do all of this together, so how about we do motion by motion, and I'm going to start with item 1 so that we can make some sort of progress here. I am going to give that, I'm going to make a motion to assign a score of 4 to increasing the proficiency of students in all racial ethnic student group by 7%. Percentage points in reading.
That's your motion, trustee Brooks.
That's my motion.
Thank you, trustee Brooks. Trustee Garcia Morales.
I second.
Thank you, trustees. We have a motion by trustee Brooks and a second by trustee Garcia Morales. We're ready for a vote for, this is the SBAC reading proficiency. Okay, that motion passes 5 to 2. Thank you, trustees. We're on to SBAC mathematics proficiency. Trustee Garcia Morales.
I move to assign, to assign a score of 2 to the SBAC mathematics proficiency for grade 6 to 8.
Thank you, trustee Williams, Garcia Morales. Trustee Williams, you're next with you.
I'll second that.
Thank you, trustee Williams. Trustee, thank you, trustee Garcia Morales. All right, trustees, we have a motion and a second. Go ahead and cast your votes. Okay, the motion passes 5 to 2. Thank you, trustees. We'll move on to the goal number 2. So 2A essentially. Trustee Williams.
Thank you. I'd like to make a motion to assign this a score of 4.
Thank you, trustee Williams. Trustee Brooks.
I would like to second the motion.
All right, thank you, trustees. We have a motion by trustee Williams and a second by trustee Brooks. And cast your votes. Thank you. That motion passes 6 to 1. Thank you, trustees. We're on to the discretionary expulsions piece of goal number 2, essentially 2B. Trustee Garcia Morales.
I make a motion I move to assign a score of 4 to this discretionary expulsions.
Thank you, trustee Garcia Morales. Trustee Williams.
I'll second.
All right, thank you, trustees. We have, trustee Guzman, did you have a commentary?
I did.
Go ahead, trustee Guzman.
Thank you. Yes, even Dr. Jara thought that this was something that needed to continue to be improved. And so, although I think this is a definite 3, I just I don't feel that it's a 4, and I wanted that to be on the record.
Thank you, trustee Guzman. Motion to thank you. Technology, we have a motion and a second, like cast your votes. All right, that motion passes 4 to 3. Thank you, trustees. And then finally, we have the last goal specific to hiring teachers. Trustee Williams.
Thank you. I'd like to go ahead and make a motion to assign this one at 3.
Thank you, trustee Williams. She said a 4. Trustee Brooks.
I will second the motion.
Thank you, trustee Brooks. Steve, you have a motion in a second. I'm going to cast your votes when you get a chance. All right, that motion passes 5 to 2. All right, since we have scores here for each individual ones, we still need to provide an overall goal here, overall number. So give me a second while we get this math going. Right, noting that there were 20 possible points when we divide that, we get a 3.6 as an overall score. So the superintendent's evaluation is a 3.6. Trustee Brooks,
We have to have a motion with the actual score.
do you want to make that motion, trustee?
Yes. I move to approve the submitted superintendent's evaluation with a summative score of 3.6 and a rating of highly effective.
Thank you, trustee Brooks. Trustee Guzman.
I'll second.
Okay, trustees, can I take a vote? Please vote when you get a chance here. Okay, that motion passes 5 to 2. Thank you, trustees. A second one that I think we're next year. With that being the summative score, again, that is the totality of this piece of the evaluation. I think to Deb's point, specific to any feedback, our one-on-ones are really good opportunities to provide superintendent feedback, potential areas of growth. We will continue this conversation because the next logical piece here would be setting the goals for next year. Obviously, we identified pieces of some of these goals that really need to be we could really expand on. So having that in the back of y'all's mind will be helpful as we think through where we focus our energies for this next round of goals. With that, we will move on to agenda item 3.01. Our next upcoming meeting of the Board of Trustees is Wednesday, October 5th at 9 a.m. And that is one of our work sessions. We'll be here at 9 a.m. in the boardroom. Actually, yes. Before I move on to public comment, I definitely don't want with Deb having not feeling too well. I definitely want to, and I'm sorry I cannot see your face, Deb. But thank you so much for helping us through this process. Not an easy one, but I do appreciate your guidance, your support, and hopefully we'll be able to work together as we hash out new goals. So we can again focus our energies here as with our district to make sure that we're moving in the right direction, so our students can read, write, be kind, happy souls, and essentially the holistic approach of our care. So again, thank you again.
I applaud you all for your great work tonight. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Deb. We are now moving on to public comment on items not listed as action items. We have Yesenia Gonzalez. Oh, and I did not open this. If you have, I forgot, I failed to mention that if you want to speak during, excuse me, during non-agenda items, to please use a card. So make sure you do that. Yep, you have, yeah, 4.01 here. Trustee. Ms. Gonzalez, yeah, 3 minutes. Okay.
Members of the board, Dr. Jara, President Cepeda. So I kind of want to give you guys an update on a concern I brought to you guys in regards to Mojave High School, which is Trustee Morales, is your school. I found out that I guess the letters for the clubs for performing arts, these students were supposed to get them last year. So imagine those students that graduated, they didn't get those letters. So one question I may have is how can we go about these students receiving those letters, because they did their years, they were involved. It's important to be recognized.
Yep.
And also that I found out that, and I know I keep bringing up my son, but I'm very proud for him starting this support group called Sanctuary, because I just found out it's a CCSD sponsored club now. And a lot of his teachers love that group. So right now they're in the they made the request now to have their own letter for the school. The design, I believe there's a deadline of October. I can't remember what Ms. Julie Smith said, but they are all very excited. So I want to thank, Regional Superintendent, I believe it's Rana, forgive me if I said it wrong. And then another thing, it's in a Spanish CCSD Padres group. There's a concern in regards to JD Smith, student safety with them crossing. And I understand that when it comes to like middle schools, there's not really much that can be done. But granted, you do have other schools around in the area. So as I'm noticing now, Dr. Jara has a lot of power here. And so I think that the appropriate thing would do is probably have a little more CCSD PD presence there, maybe keeping an eye on the area, because what I was reading in Spanish, what was being said is these parents are afraid because these, obviously, people are driving reckless. They are scared that their kids are going to be hit. And I know because I see it at Crown Middle School, that is Trustee Katie Williams, that's your school, I've seen it. I've heard of kids being hit at Crown, and it's not an exaggeration. So I think that maybe at least when the school is out, maybe have a little bit more of that presence there, so it tells people, hey, we need to slow down. I know that there was before in the past, you guys teamed up with Metro, North Las Vegas, you know, maybe just make these parents feel a little more comfort knowing that their kids are at least somewhat being seen from a distance, or just something, you know, because God forbid if one of these kids get hit or something else happens, a parent brought the concern and nothing was done. And I mean, these parents, some of them have language barriers, they can't express it to you guys here, but I'm just expressing it based on being able to speak both languages. Thank you. Thank you.
Mr. Taylor?
Hello, ladies and gentlemen of the board. So I guess pretty much this is our public comment where I get to have a little bit of fun with you, ladies and gentlemen. So we've been addressing this situation since October. August 25th, when I addressed you guys and brought a packet to you, and they withdrew him that same night, 4 hours later. You guys sent child services to my house for academic neglect. They agreed with the correspondence with Viserys and doing the work and those emails and phone numbers. Yeah, that wasn't an unverified absence. It was your school ignoring me. So the child services thing that you guys said, yeah, that dropped. So basically, if your principal is lying on school reports about my son being assaulted, if you read this detailed behavioral file, I have a copy of it, even though you guys didn't want to give it to me. But if you read, there's 4 different stories about what happened Jan 10. Even though I have the exact story and where it happened and everything that happened. Again, like I addressed with the police, they are not going to help because they were told not to. And Danny Bahara pretty much addressed it, and we already know who he gets his orders from. So again, if basic is supposed to be your guys' crown jewel because nobody speaks on it, maybe because there's 500 Sped students on there and half of those parents are under gag orders. It's probably why you don't hear nothing about that school.
You think?
Those 500 Sped students are doubled up because you know you ran half of your staff off because of what happened to Ian. Mr. Viserys is in the hospital right now because of a congestive heart failure that Mr. Bustamante created. But yet, I see you address where we're caring about that. What about that school? I understand you guys keep it on low key because you know that's where the robotics is and where they send all the rich parents. But the truth actually does set most people free. And I enjoyed those numbers that you guys got for reading. My kid's been in the 2nd grade reading level since he's in 11th grade now. So I'm just curious where you get those numbers. Was it from that Phantom Weedle report that you guys have? You know, the one from distance learning that I'm still trying to figure out where the hell it came from. Because no one did testing. No one did testing last year. So in those numbers you guys did, my kid obviously wasn't in that numbers. So how did you get those numbers? If students that are missing, it's not accurate numbers if there's not everybody tallied. So I actually would probably say that those numbers are quite ludicrous. It's probably next to that police report sitting that, you know, the school district said it didn't exist. It's probably sitting in that box with everything else that Jara says he does, but he don't do. You know, like he cares about the kids, no child left behind. Yeah, but he keeps forgetting about mine. He gets my emails. I know because I get a receipt saying you saw them. So I know you're seeing my emails. How about I call me, and we can address this. I don't have to keep repeating myself.
Okay. Thank you, and Sienna Binder.
I definitely want that video. Oh, we got the whole thing. We got the whole
Anna
thing.
Binder for the record, Madam President. Back when I used to work, we'd have these meetings with our insurance carriers and counsel for the insurance companies. And I can't recollect how many of these that we would conduct where we took large businesses that companies would insure and they assess a risk rating. I don't think in any document I've ever seen what our risk rating is for Clark County school districts to be insured. But I think I said it back in the spring when think we're talking about discipline. I was kind of asking out loud, is it cheaper to pay the insurance deductible and ignore the community, or fix the underlying issues? So with what I just said earlier, and if these are, again, only the few things that like the public knows about, I would love to be a fly on the wall to some emails in this room, because from what I know of these two instances and what's getting tried to be getting swept under the rug, I can't imagine what we don't hear about, and I think I want to vomit right now. But at some point, I guess I'll put in a request for that. I want to know what our risk rating is, because I would never insure us in this country if I knew half of what I know in the 3 years that I've been paying attention and listening to our parents and our students and you guys and our teachers and everybody. So it's dangerous, because what happens when a carrier drops you? What would happen to Clark County School District if we could not get anyone to insure us? How many jury verdicts have we had in the last year alone that are detrimental if we did not have insurance coverage?
117.
Thank you. And going forward, when I say like things like this are happening in the community and you think you can just keep sweeping it under the rug, you cannot hide it. So let's spend money and get people properly trained to deal with our SPED children. It is not hard.
I love you.
Thank you. That is all I had for public comment on non-agenda items. Okay. We are now moving on to 5.01 adjournment. Trustee Brooks.
Thank you, President Spade. I'd like to motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Trustee Brooks. Trustee Guzman.
I'd like to second.
Thank you, Trustee Guzman. Trustees, we have a motion and a second. Please cast your vote. All right, motion passes 7-0. Thank you very much, trustees. We will see you at our October 5th meeting.
I appreciate no one needing a food reference because I'm sorry. I normally we get food references. Like, thanks, Jane.
Bring me tacos. Dude, go to the other next one. Yeah, awesome tacos.